I wanted to create a space to honor the strength and resilience of women, to ask the question, what motivates a woman to rise up and stand greater than the very obstacle that tried to keep her down? Where does this greatness come from? And how can we access it together through the sharing of story and experience? Inspiring, empowering, and loving, helping women to see themselves as the heroes of their lives, coming together in the practice of a kinder beauty, exploring the very essence of who we are, and reaching a new way of being. This is the Greater Than Project.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Greater Than Project. And today I'm very happy to have with me a woman who is a friend. She is a speaker. She is associate pastor at Ocean Hills Covenant Church in Santa Barbara, which happens to be my church. And she is the author of a beautiful book called Finding Faith in the Dark, When the Story of Your Life Takes a Turn That You Didn't Plan. Join me in welcoming Laurie Polich Short. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
It's my pleasure, Michelle.
And talking about this book, Finding Faith in the Dark, it's poignant and it's real and it shares stories of people going through tremendous pain, hurt, darkness, and knowing that their life isn't quite going the way that they planned and wondering why.
Which pretty much is all of us.
Yes.
Because at a certain point in time, you get to a crossroads where you go, this isn't exactly what I thought my life was going to look like. And of course, for some people, that turn is a lot more difficult and painful than it is for others. Particularly if it's an area that you just thought would be resolved, or you thought was going to happen, or you thought was going to look different. And that really is what this book is about. The subtitle says it all, when the story of your life takes a turn you didn't plan. So.
Absolutely, and we can also relate to that. Tell me, if you would, what led you to write this book?
Well, obviously it was my own journey. For me, it was singleness. The book isn't just my story, but my story is woven through it. I wasn't the ring by spring gal in college. You know, a lot of college girls, that's their dream by the time they graduate. But I thought about 25 was when I would get married. And then, of course, 25 came and went. And I got to 30, and now I'm praying a little bit harder. And then I got to 40. And I think for a lot of women who want to be married, that's the time when you start stepping back and saying, wow, this isn't what I thought my life was going to look like. And then finally at 42, I got engaged. And it was a huge celebration in my household, as you can imagine. Finally, she's getting married. And so I promptly had my 2 wedding showers and bought my wedding dress. And then my fiance got deployed. And so he was going to be gone for 9 months. And I thought, well, okay, I can wait a little bit longer. So now I've turned 43. And unbeknownst to me, in the time that he was away, he and his ex-wife were communicating, and she was beginning to have second thoughts about their divorce. And so when he came back, we broke up, and he actually remarried his ex-wife. Being in that place where this was my dream finally happening, and then to have it slip away like that. At that point, especially in my own faith, it was a crossroads, because I felt a little bit like God was almost being cruel to me. And so that really led me in the journey that eventually led to this book, is what do we do with our faith? Or maybe even we don't have faith because of all the pain and suffering in the world. How do you reconcile having a good God with all the things that you see around you? And so it caused me to explore very deeply what faith is and who God is. And that is really what this book is about, and where I came, again, not just my story, but other people, where they came to in their own faith journeys as well. I think sometimes when we go through a difficult season, it presents us with that option. Mm-hmm. How are we now going to live? Are we going to be open to a bigger life.
I think that's beautiful, because so often when we're faced with these times that are so challenging, and the pain seems to be all around us and there's no way out, we feel like it's the end. So that's a
Yes.
real change in perspective, to think, well, perhaps we're in the middle.
Oh yes, yes. In fact, that's a whole chapter in the book,
Yes.
the middle of the story. Because I think that whole concept, if people could grab onto that just gives you, you can then live your life as an adventure. Because you think about it, you go to the movies, you don't want to see just a normal story of everything going the way the character hopes it will go. No, you want to see the struggle and the victories and the challenges, and I just think that really is what life is. And if we are struggling, we so often see it as the end.
Yes.
Oh, this is it. It's over. Life is over. And in fact, it is not. If you got up this morning and you're still breathing, your story's not over.
Oh, I love that. I
And
so agree.
Yeah, so that's really what I try to talk about in the book, and certainly I experienced in my own life, because I for sure thought my story was pretty much over as far as marriage, you know, at 43, to be single again and have a wedding dress in my mother's closet, and it just looked really bad for a time, but God wasn't finished.
That's right, and it was the middle, because
Yeah.
you have such a beautiful marriage.
Yes.
What a
Yes.
beautiful couple you and Jerry
Oh,
are.
thanks.
Can you talk a little bit about
Yes,
that?
well, so I got a call from a good friend of both of ours, John Ireland, who is the pastor of the church I work at. We were old friends. And he said, "Oh, Laurie, I heard you got married." And I was like, "No."
Oh,
And he
that's
goes, "Oh,
tough.
sorry, sorry." But we were praying about this new position at our church, and your name came up. So I came up to Santa Barbara and absolutely fell in love with the church, and was working here 3 years actually before I met my husband. So I always say to people, even if the door that you're looking for isn't opening, pay attention to what doors are opening, because that door might lead to another door that's going to lead you where you wouldn't be able to go if you didn't go to the one, you know.
Yes.
And so I feel like, because had I not come up here, even though I wasn't looking for a job, I would never have met Jerry. So it was 3 years after I got here, and of course when I got here, everybody and their mother was setting me up. Every 50-year-old man. And so I went through that and dated. I was still dating, but then I did a book club with a guy in our church, and he said one day, you know, I don't know why, but when I go running with this guy, I always think about you. And he goes, but you know, his ex-wife just left him. And I was like, oh, no, no, no.
I'm not going there
I'm not
again.
doing that again. Which is another, I think, point in the book, that sometimes we're so in pain, we are afraid to move forward in an area that we've experienced such hurt and devastation, even if we want it so much. And you have to walk in faith to get to that place.
Yes.
You know,
I call it sitting in the struggle.
That's right.
Yeah.
And
Stuck.
because if you say, I can't do it, if I had said, you know what, I can't meet him, I can't go through this again, I would have missed out on what was there. But it was so scary.
Can I read a couple of lines?
Sure.
It's page 63 of the book, but it talks about transitions, and we were touching on that. Transitions are not easy, for they call us to leave what is familiar. You go on to say, what lies before us may have the potential for greater fulfillment, but it will also require great risk.
Yeah.
And it's so true. I've read that line over and over and over again, and the matter of trusting God in these times of transition, these times that offer great risk and great fear.
Absolutely.
And we were touching on that, you know, when we're hurt, when we go through painful moments, a lot of times we come out of that with a lot of rules, because we don't want to be hurt again.
Right.
And often those rules box us in from receiving God's grace.
Yeah.
Can you talk
Yes.
about that a little
Well,
bit?
I think they're set up for survival. We
Yeah.
think that we will only survive if we say, I'm never doing that again. And certainly for me, that was, I'm never going to marry someone who has an ex-wife. But I remember saying, if this happens, I don't know if you've ever felt this, Michelle, but remember saying, if this happens, if my engagement breaks up, I don't know if I'll survive.
I go back to a time in my own life, Laurie, where being a child of adoption, international adoption, I was in foster care in England, and I was told in my young life that my birth father, who didn't want to be a father to me and didn't pay for any of my foster care, said before I was born that he didn't even want to know when I was born. I had a very early belief system that fathers leave. I was adopted. My adoptive father, who passed away in January and who I love, he had a drinking problem when I was growing up. And so emotionally, my father wasn't there for me. And then again, I felt that fathers leave.
Yes.
So I grew up with this belief that just men just go and fathers don't stay and you can't trust. And so you have to take care of yourself. And so you have to protect your heart and your thoughts. And I had so many rules.
Yeah.
And there was a time when I decided I wanted to reach out and find my birth father. And it was a burning desire. I wanted to stand before him and not be the secret anymore.
Yeah.
And I wanted to force that reunion. And I had it planned in my head. And I came very close to finding him, but he passed away.
Really?
Right when I discovered where he was. And I remember just falling to my knees and saying, why, God? I was so close to this, to finding him, to facing him, and you've abandoned me. Don't you see?
Yeah.
Don't you see how much this hurts? Don't you understand how much I wanted this?
Yeah.
And what came to me was God saying, I'm your father, and I've never left you. And you've just been gazing in the wrong direction. It's time to gaze toward me, because I am ever steady and ever present. And it was a great healing that came upon me. And it wasn't that I didn't hurt anymore, but there was a sense of security that I had not had before. And I was looking toward earthly fathers to fill that.
Right.
And they're just people too.
That's right. That's right.
In their own brokenness and their own journeys.
Yeah. I always think of 3 words when I feel what you're saying. You know, I'm stuck on my past or thinking about the future. I say to myself, be here now. Be here now. Because right now is where God is. And he has something for you right where you are.
It's so beautiful and so powerful and so hopeful. Oh, I want people to get that. Be here now. And that's been perhaps the hardest thing in my own life, and probably for many others, is just the be here now part, and understanding that God, as the great I am, is so present and right here, carrying us through and seeing the big picture and weaving it all together.
That's right.
And calling us to trust. And so the questions of why me?
Right.
Why me?
Yeah.
It's shifting to maybe, well, why not me, God? Let's go on this adventure.
Yes. Yeah.
Show me.
Exactly.
Show me I trust you. So Laurie, I wanted to ask you if there's anyone who is watching right now who feels so covered up in darkness, they don't know where to turn, what's your message to them?
Well, I would say there are points in your life where you just have to be in it, and God is with you in it. And then C.S. Lewis has a great line in one of his Chronicles of Narnia. I think Aslan says to one of them, you know, it's okay to cry for a while, but sooner or later you have to figure out what you're going to do. And I think there comes a point in time where God wants us to lift our eyes off our situation and look around us, to recognize that there are other people that suffer. I know that one of the greatest healing times of my own life was when I got out of my story and entered another story of pain and became a healing agent in somebody else's life. And that actually provided healing for me, even though nothing really changed for me. And so it's a mystery how God works, but I think if we can widen our gaze, as you talked about, and say, God, okay, I'm not living the way I want to, but what do you have for me here?
I truly love this book.
Oh, thank you.
And I found such comfort in it. within its pages. But for you, when you're out there talking to people in the world and you're sharing, what's been the sweetest parts of this particular journey with this particular book?
I think getting the emails and the messages from people that talk about their journey with it, because it's the kind of book that you don't just read, you almost live with it.
Yes.
I've gotten emails from people who say, I was weeping in the bathtub over this part, but then at the end, and the last chapter is my favorite chapter, to come to the end and realize a little clue as to why, the why of why God is allowing pain in your life. I think both the sweetest and the hardest part of writing a book like this is that you hear a lot of stories of pain. I've heard a lot of stories of pain, lots of different ones. But to hear that this book has given hope has been the sweetest part, because that's why I wrote it. I feel like if that can happen, then my prayer's been answered.
In the darkness, we are given the gift of discovering a bigger faith. The risk God takes is that we will never see past our struggle to find it. It appears that for God, this risk is worth the prize. You are that prize. We're the prize.
Yeah.
And He risks us never seeing past the struggle. Can you expand on that for me?
I think it's a huge risk that God took by creating us with a free will, but the other choice would be that we're puppets, that we don't choose. We just, all of us know there is a God, and that's a different relationship. When someone chooses you, you have a relationship. And that is, I believe, what God is doing with all of us. He's wooing us. He's wooing us. And sometimes it doesn't feel that way when He allows pain and struggle. But when we choose Him, I can't even imagine how that makes God feel, because that's why He created us.
God created us for relationship, to trust Him and to choose Him. No matter the struggle you may be facing right now, know that you can ask God for help. You can lean in, not away. Lean into a God who understands suffering. And know that through faith, you are no longer ruled by circumstances. Through faith, there is power to transcend them, because faith is bigger than darkness and light.